Welcome back. Joining me now in the studio is Texas Land Commissioner Jerry Patterson, who is running in a very competitive Republican primary for Lieutenant Governor. Welcome, Commissioner.
Good to be back.
All right, thank you for joining us. So I want to talk about your campaign a little bit. Right now, this last couple of weeks, it seemed like gay marriage has been a big talker. What is your, obviously we know your stance, but how do you feel like this is playing into this whole primary?
Well, I think it's going to play into the primary, but it really has no reason to, because all four of us have the same position on gay marriage. You know, marriage should be between one man and one woman, and I add in at a time. The problem is the federal courts and recent court decisions look like we're going to be in for a pretty tough battle on that subject.
And as far as what's happening with Democrats in Texas right now, support seems to be swelling nationwide for that movement in Texas. What do you think?
I don't know that the support is swelling. The courts are moving in that direction. I don't think the public is moving in that direction.
Here in Texas?
Here as well. I mean, we're talking about federal courts primarily. I don't know of a state court that's ruled in favor of marriage between folks of the same gender, but the federal courts are doing things. This is a state issue. It's a 10th Amendment issue. The states regulate many things and should be the sole authority, whether it's criminal justice, whether it's who can marry or not marry. And this is more symbolic than substantive. I don't know anything that you need to, anything you can't do by contractually entering into a contract with another party. So I think it's more symbolic than substantive.
What do you think about things when you see things happening in places like Oklahoma and Utah?
Well, I think it's the courts again. I mean, the courts, the federal courts, are intervening in what should be a state issue.
One of your opponents, Todd Staples, he did sponsor the marriage amendment here in Texas. Right. Do you think that that will, help him out in this last push for the campaign?
No, because I think the voters understand that all of us have the exact same position. And Todd sponsored a bill at a time when he was in the legislature, and I wasn't. So, I passed a concealed handgun law. That doesn't mean Todd is anti-concealed handgun law. So I think it's a moot point in this race. And
you're still kind of the gun candidate.
I am. I'm the only A+ NRA rated candidate in the race. And not only NRA A+ rated, but I'm the only Texas State Rifle Association rated candidate in the race. I have the endorsements of the majority of the state Republican Executive Committee. I have the endorsement of Ron Paul, which is very liberty. He generates a lot of support among the liberty folks out there. I've got the endorsement of former Congressman Dick Armey and former State Chairman Tom Pauken, and other endorsements are coming in with great frequency. So I think we are poised to be in a runoff, and of course the three of us, other than Dewhurst, are fighting to be for second place and make the runoff. I think we're going to be there.
When did you leave the legislature?
I left the legislature in January of 1999 after 6 years of service. I had run on a pledge of term limits, and so I self-limited and lived up to my pledge. I'm ambivalent on term limits now. I don't think they're the panacea that we think they are, but I had run on that platform, so I left after 2 terms in the Senate.
What's changed in the legislature during that time?
Well, obviously there are more Republicans. When I was in the legislature, when I first was elected to the Senate, I think we had 12 Republican senators out of 31. Now, we are going to have 20 Republican senators out of 31 in the next session in all probability. So that has a dramatic change. Same thing in the House. The House Republican majority was not there. It is now today. And that puts the Democrats in a minority position similar to where the Republicans were, 20 years ago. So that's the major change.
When you left the legislature, you ran for land commissioner the first time.
That's correct, right.
David Dewhurst beat you then. Is he going to be successful this time?
Yeah, I mean, I look forward to the rematch and the runoff. David outspent me 10-1 in the '98 Republican primary for land commissioner. He got 51.2% of the vote. We have a grassroots following that other candidates do not enjoy. We have dedicated constituencies such as the gun guys and gals, if you will, veterans. I'm a retired Marine. I'm a Vietnam veteran. There's 1.8 million veterans in Texas. They know who the guy is that's been on their team for a long time as far as veterans here in Texas and the things that we do through the Veterans Land Board. We have a ground game that's excelled, and I believe there are some shoes yet to drop in this race that will change the dynamic substantially.
You, Staples, and Senator Dan Patrick seem to all be beating up on Dewhurst. He's the primary opponent everyone keeps talking about.
I'm not beating up on Dewhurst.
What about his last year? You know, I mean, he's gone through some ups and downs as far as the abortion filibuster.
It was not a sterling 12 months for David, but I'm not beating up on him. The voters know about that. I'm trying to focus on telling them that I'm the only candidate in the race that's going to tell them the same story no matter what day of the week or where I'm below. I mean, I'm not going to tell one group, as did Patrick and Dewhurst, that I support the repeal of the 17th Amendment. In other words, I want the legislature to pick our U.S. senators, not the voters, and do that in October, and then come back in January and tell another crowd, oh no. In the case of Patrick, he said, I didn't even say that. I must have been misquoted. But the problem is, it's on tape. You know, folks want you to be straight with them, and they respect that more than complete agreement with them. And I tell voters with great frequency, if you want someone that you can agree with on everything to vote for, then you need to run. That's the only way it's going to happen. Voters want somebody who will look them in the eye, tell them where they are, and stick with that position and not change it because another group has a different opinion and you want to make that group happy. That's not Jerry Patterson. Speaking
of the U.S. Senate, the last time around you did support David Dewhurst when he ran, you know, and now you're running against him again. How does that dynamic work out?
Well, at that time I thought he was the best choice, and I made that decision primarily because David was the only veteran in the race. We are sending young men and women into harm's way. We have, unlike we did when I was a kid, we have very, very few veterans in the Congress. And my son, who's the 5th consecutive generation of our family to have served in wartime overseas, was at that time overseas serving in wartime. So I like folks in the federal Congress that have had military experience. That was the reason I made that decision then. But the difference is that I didn't lambast David Dewhurst. I didn't lambast, obviously I endorsed him. I didn't lambast Ted Cruz. I did not, like Dan Patrick did on his radio show, I didn't call Ted Cruz a liar during that runoff period. You know, you can be gentlemanly, you can gentlemanly and honestly and sincerely disagree, but you know, your comments are, in this day and age, known forever.
If the legislature did have the chance to, you know, put the U.S. senators into office, would you support Ted Cruz at this time?
Yes. Well, yeah, but I don't want the legislature to do it. I want the voters to do it.
Right, correct.
Yeah. But yes, I would. Yes.
What do you think would happen if Jerry Patterson does get through a primary runoff and becomes lieutenant governor someday, and we have Greg Abbott as governor? How would you guys work together?
Well, I think we're going to be in constant contact, and I'm going to lead the Senate in a manner that it needs to be led. The #1 ingredient of leadership is having the respect of those who you seek to lead. If you have that, you can lead. I learned that in 24 years in the Marine Corps. I learned that in the legislature passing controversial legislation such as the concealed handgun law, such as the most significant property rights legislation in the last 50 years, the home equity lending constitutional amendment. Those issues were controversial. They were opposed by Republicans and Democrats. I was able to get them done. I'll lead the Senate knowing that this is my last office. I do not have to worry about, you know, the next election. I'm not going to be U.S. Senator, you know, or governor. I'm going to be lieutenant governor for 2 terms. I'm going home. And that's almost liberating because you are free, not that I wasn't before or wouldn't be otherwise, you're free to do what you think is best for Texas and not worry about the next election. Instead, you can worry about the next generation. That's exactly what I'm going to do.
All right, Commissioner, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Josh.
Appreciate it.
Enjoyed it again.
Straight ahead, we turn to our political roundtable for inside coverage of the campaign season. Morgan Smith from the Texas Tribune and Bob Garrett from the Dallas Morning News when State of Texas In Depth continues.